In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you my top 10 things to do in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. What's good, everybody? It's Louis from GoLouisGusto.com, and I just got back from South Florida, spending the Christmas break with my family and my girlfriend, but also checking out some of the amazing things to do in South Florida. I've got some really dope content on the way. I'm in the process of editing and putting all those things together, but for the meanwhile, I wanted to share with you my top 10 things to do in South Florida for 2020. Now make sure you watch till the end to get my personalized food and coffee recommendations, and of course, in the comments below, please put your own tips for the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Hollywood area. Help me out in case I missed anything. Now with all that said, let's jump into the top 10 list. At number 10, I have beaches. Of course, you know I couldn't do a top 10 list about South Florida without mentioning beaches. I know it's a little cliche, but when you're down there, you absolutely must make at least one trip to a beach, and you've got plenty to choose from. There's Fort Lauderdale Beach, Hollywood Beach, Miami Beach, and South Beach, just to name a few. Myself, I did make a little trip to South Beach, checked out the ocean waves and the sand, walked on the beach walk, and had myself a really good time. Now, of course, you can make a whole day out of this, bring a picnic, some beach blankets, but don't forget your sunscreen because you don't want to return red like a lobster. At number 9, I have historic Fort Lauderdale. Now, a lot of you out there may not know that Fort Lauderdale has a little bit of a rich history to it, and you can visit some of these historic sites during your time in South Florida. One of them is the Stranahan House, which is the oldest house in Fort Lauderdale. It was lived in by Frank Stranahan, who founded the city of Fort Lauderdale, and his wife Ivy. They built it initially as a trading post along the New River, later converted it into a house, and luckily for us, it's still standing. It's part of Fort Lauderdale's rich history. In the same area, you can also check out the Fort Lauderdale History Center. At number 8, I have one of Miami's newest developments, the Brickell City Centre. Now, Brickell, Miami is the financial heart of Miami and perhaps all of South Florida. So you've got lots of office buildings, but now you've got a Brickell City Centre, which is basically a mall with apartments and condos and lots of fine dining. And overall, it's a very lovely building with a lot to do right in the heart of the financial district. At number 7, I have one of South Florida's most underrated attractions, and that's the National Geographic Wildlife Gallery. I say it's underrated because growing up in South Florida, I'd never even heard of that until recently. Now here's where you're gonna find some beautiful wildlife photography of animals like zebras and seals and monkeys and lions and polar bears. The National Geographic Gallery is free and completely open to the public. You're not gonna spend all day there, but it is a nice visit when you're on Las Olas Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale. That brings us to number 6 on the list, which is Las Olas Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale. Here's where you're gonna find a very quaint street to walk down. Lots of locals, tourists from all around the world, and you're gonna have boutique shopping, nice restaurants, dessert places. This is one of the best things to do in Fort Lauderdale. At number 5, we have the PEREZ Art Museum of Miami. Now, when you think about Miami, museums probably aren't the first thing that pop into your head. This museum has undergone several iterations, and they're now celebrating their 35th birthday. They're currently in a beautifully modern building overlooking the water with hanging gardens, a very nice restaurant, and rotating galleries in addition to their permanent collection. And you can see some insight into South Florida's art history. And speaking of art, at number 4, we have the Art Deco district of Miami Beach. This is where you're gonna find historic Art Deco architecture in the form of hotels and other buildings. There is a welcome center, so you can stop there first, or you can just take a completely self-guided tour. It's a lot of fun, it's very colorful, and there's a lot more to do around that area. If you ever played the game GTA Vice City, a lot of this district is gonna look very familiar to you. I know it did to me. Alright, before we get into our top 3, if you're enjoying this video, please hit that like button below because that really helps me out and helps me to make bigger and better travel videos for you. And at number 3, I have the Vizcaya Museum and Gardens. This is a historic mansion in Miami, built for the Chicago industrialist James Deering. Now, I'm gonna have an entire video just on this, so I'm not gonna get into too many details here, but trust me when I say it's very much worth the price of admission. There are some Italian/French gardens and a beautiful mansion overlooking the water. So many photo opportunities. Many events are held here like weddings and quinceañeras. It's definitely something not to be missed during your trip to South Florida. Alright guys, at number 2, I have the Fort Lauderdale water taxi. Yes, Fort Lauderdale, also known as the Venice of America, has many canals and the New River. I know it's not the most creative name in the world, but they have a awesome water taxi that will take you from stop to stop. You can transfer and go to Hollywood. I think it's about $28, but during the happy hour they have a discounted admission. I'll have more information coming soon on the water taxi. It's a lot of fun. You can hop on and hop off as much as you like. The ticket is good all day, and along the river you're gonna have historic things to do, different hotels, restaurants, and beautiful scenic views of Fort Lauderdale's most expensive and noteworthy homes. Alright, I know you guys were waiting for this one. At number 1 on my list, I have Wynwood, and of course the Wynwood Walls. Wynwood is the beautiful art district of Miami, which was once an industrial sector, is now converted into this art lover's paradise where you're gonna have lots of trendy restaurants, shopping, coffee. Now I'm not lying when I say you find art everywhere in Wynwood. It's on the sidewalks, on the fences, on the crumbling warehouses, on the revitalized buildings. It truly is everywhere, and it makes your trip to South Florida so worth it. Definitely stop by Wynwood when you're in the Miami area. Before I get into the food and coffee, I have a bonus for you guys, and that's Calle Ocho. It's a bonus on my list because I only got to spend a little bit of time there to get a Cuban sandwich, but there's so much to do. It's the heart of Cuban culture in Miami, which is so much a part of what Miami is. Okay, so getting into my food recommendations, I'm gonna start with Aromas de Peru, which is a Peruvian restaurant in Coral Gables. When I was there, I got me a beef seco, which is a Peruvian beef stew, and my girlfriend got a ceviche. They also serve you Peruvian corn in a nice spicy cilantro dipping sauce. They have great service there, and it is very authentic. They have a lot of typical Peruvian items on the list, although I was a little disappointed because they did not have the green rice that I was really wishing for. My next recommendation is 15th Street Fisheries, which is a stop on the Fort Lauderdale water taxi route. This is where you're gonna get very fresh fish. You're not very far from the Atlantic Ocean. Some great service and amazing views onto the New River. Definitely recommend this place. You can also feed the fish that kind of circle this restaurant. It's part of a bigger Fort Lauderdale marina. If you're in the Brickell area, I definitely recommend stopping at the River Oyster Bar. Now, the Brickell area has undergone a lot of renovations in the last few years, but the River Oyster Bar is one thing that remained. It was established, I think, in the early to mid 2000s. Great oysters, great seafood, a lot of fusion, different influences, impeccable service, and I really enjoyed my meal here. I mentioned that I went to Calle Ocho for a Cuban sandwich, and the place I went to is Sandwich de Miami, which is, again, a newer place, but definitely super authentic. Whoever came up with this restaurant definitely knew what they were doing. They have lots of authentic Cuban items on lists, from appetizers to sandwiches, and of course the coffee. In 2020, we're all about those food markets, and I definitely made sure to stop by a couple during my time in South Florida. The first one is the TIMEOUT Market, Miami. This is located in Miami Beach, not too far from Lincoln Road. The best of the best restaurants of Miami in this place. I got myself a highly rated and highly awarded veggie burger from Love Life Cafe. We also had some wood fire mushrooms and potatoes from Leña. The pastries from Antonio Bashor were so amazing, and they tasted as great as they looked. The other food market that we went to during our trip was 1-800-LUCKY. This is an Asian food market located in Wynwood. You have some great choices here, from Oji Poke to Yip, where you can get dim sum. Wayla does Thai food, and there's also Taiyaki NYC, where you can get those beautiful Japanese ice cream in the taiyaki cones. Highly recommend that one. All right, and I've also got a bonus for you on the food list. Florida peeps, if you know, you know. Of course, you gotta go to Publix and get you a Publix sub with the boar's head meat. Definitely no trip to South Florida is complete unless you get that pub sub. All right, now getting into the coffee. This is for all my Java heads, or whatever we call ourselves these days. I'm a coffee lover. If you didn't know that, now you do know. It's part of my daily routine, but I also enjoy the process and trying new beans and all that good stuff. First recommendation is Panther Coffee in Wynwood. This is a little spot with a Panther theme, obviously, and you can get an espresso flight. You can get your typical drinks with different milks like oat milk or soy milk. For a more authentic Miami experience, go to Latin American Bakery and Cafe in Coral Gables. get yourself just a very basic cafecito or cortado. Definitely a Cuban experience that you won't want to miss. In the Timeout Miami market, you have the local Cuban, which is also going to have Cuban coffee. And finally, in the Brickell City Centre, you have Pasión del Cielo. This is a unique place because when I ordered my espresso, I had a choice of like 15 different types of beans. So it definitely was an interesting experience. They also had some fresh juices. It was a nice atmosphere and very good coffee. I truly hope that you found this video useful. If you did, please drop a like down below. And if you're new to my channel, hit that subscribe button to join the Gusto gang. And before I go, I wanted to tell you guys about my other South Florida related content. You can find it linked above my head. And be sure to check out my other playlists, Las Vegas, Chicago, architecture, and all the other content that I have to offer. Let's also connect on Instagram. I have my travel and architecture photography up there. I really appreciate you guys watching. Have a great rest of your day. Bless your 2020. I will see you next time. Peace and chicken grease.